Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is the first official episode of the Pink Corner podcast. I'm here with Angel Cortes. I know I announced it and teased it a little bit earlier this week, but when choosing my first guest for the podcast, I wanted someone with an inspirational story. Angel Cortes is a former Army Ranger. He is a firearms instructor. He is a business owner and he's a community activist and much more. But Angel Cortes, how would you introduce yourself to people who don't know you?
First of all, thank you for having me on here. When you first said, "Hey, I think it'd be awesome for you to be a guest," I was thinking like, "Oh, that's cool. I'll be like number 10 or like 15," and then when you're like number 1, I was like, "Oh shit, number 1!" Like, oh crap. I mean, because I know you know a lot of people. You do a lot yourself, so I was like, "Fuck, number 1. Okay, yeah. All right, don't fuck this up."
Don't fuck this up.
How would I describe myself? I would say I'm a former gang member, former member of the Special Operations community. I'm a community activist for the veteran community and the low income community. I'm an entrepreneur and a kidney donor.
One thing I want to say is I have met a lot of people, especially through martial arts, and that's how we met, is through the martial arts community. But like I said, when choosing my first guest, no one has such an inspirational story, in my opinion, than what I've heard from you. I know we've talked about it, I feel like multiple times. We've gone in depth about some of your stories, and I want to touch on some of those just because I feel like in the martial arts community in general, you come across so many amazing and unique people, and you're one of the top ones. So I know you touched a little bit on your background, but what brought you to join the military and join the Army? Like, what led you there?
So the Army was growing up. I just like everyone else. I like Batman, X-Men, all that, right? But I loved watching the soldier movies, and at the time I couldn't put words to it, and I didn't really understand why I was so, connected with that, or maybe not connected, but I loved
like drawn
it.
to it.
Yeah, drawn to it.
Yeah.
And it's because they had a lot of stuff that I didn't have in myself and in my life. Like you see these guys fighting together, working together, taking care of each other. Literally giving up their lives
for like a community and like sense of drive. Yeah.
A brotherhood and love, and I didn't have that. I grew up physically and mentally abused, basically from the beginning. We were poor, so malnourished. So obviously, I'm not, an athlete. I'm not athletic. I'm not big. I'm just this malnourished kid that's lives in poverty, and So when I see that, I was like, that's what I want to be, and I knew they were real.
Yeah.
Right. X-Men, they're not real. At least, maybe they are in the future. That'd be cool, but that's not real. So I knew that was real, and I was like, man, maybe one day that'd be awesome to kind of do that.
Yeah. And then I know you mentioned former gang member. I feel like being in the military has a sense of community, not comparing it to, a gang, but that sense of brotherhood and that sense of community that you kind of craved. I feel like your whole childhood coming up. How did describe a little bit like your experience, like being a gang member, and how, that influence led you directly to the military, and like how that almost negative sense of community turned into something very positive.
So, so when you're poor, you live in low income communities, and with that comes guns and drugs and crime and all that. And sooner or later, you get to an age where you're not just a kid anymore, and these gang members are now asking you, what gang are you from, and so on and so on. And I hit an age. I grew up skating. Like I love to skate. I didn't have a skateboard, but my cousins had a skateboard, or my friends had a skateboard, and then whenever I could skate, I would skate.
Yeah.
And then one day, I one of our guys in our skate crew got his board taken away and by some gang members, and I knew they weren't going to give it back. I wanted to get the skateboard back, but I knew I couldn't do anything. Like, even though I could beat up maybe that one guy, but I was like, I can't beat up all the guys, and I'm going to get my ass kicked.
Yeah.
So you just have to take it. And then and there, I had to make a decision. Like, I'm getting older. I'm about to go into, junior high and then high school. Like, I'm not invincible anymore. These guys are going to keep doing this, and I'm going to have to let them keep punking me. And I'm like, no, I need, and I made the choice. Obviously, I didn't understand the consequences while I was making that choice, but I'm like, that's it. I'm not going to get picked on.
Didn't want to be messed with anymore.
Didn't want to be messed with. So I found a gang that they were like, hey, we don't like that gang. And I was like, hey, I don't like them either.
Hey, I don't like them either.
So, you know, I started hanging out with them, and I would still bring my skateboard around, and they'd be like, dude, stop bringing your skateboard.
You're making us look bad.
Yeah, they would tell me that.
We're not tough with the skateboard around.
They're like, dude, you don't look tough.
You're like, it's just who I am. I can't change.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you have skater clothes, and they're like, and then obviously they like Corteses and like Nikes, and occasionally I would dress like that, but for me that's not me. I was just like in costume, like 100%.
This is it's like your uniform, like your clocking
it's a uniform. Yeah. So I did that, and obviously I had a lot of rage in me because, you know, I the cards that I was dealt with, and
you had siblings too, right?
Siblings, yes.
You're the oldest, you said?
I'm the second oldest.
The second oldest, okay.
And, you know, not having a role model, and so I was angry, and so the gang, it's almost like they know it. They know that, and they use that to.
They're like feeling that void that they know you have, yeah.
So they'd be like, hey, we'll feed you. We'll here's some money. Here's, you know, now you have some status within the community instead of just being some poor punk kid that anybody fucks with. Now nobody can fuck with.
It's like
you.
A sense of family almost.
Yes.
Yeah, you feel taken care of and wanted, and
And I did that, and you know, but while I was doing it, I was like, fuck, like this isn't it. This isn't life. And even though my actions didn't show that, I knew there's no long game in this.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I've been thinking about it lately, and I don't regret taking that step to become a gang member, because I want to stand up for myself. I tried my best not to let what we would call like civilians or innocent people get messed with.
Yeah.
Did I rob and steal? Yeah, but I was robbing and stealing from other gang members, from guys that I growing up would see
doing bad things.
Yeah,
so you're almost like, this is your karma.
And this now I get to fight back.
Yeah.
And did some people that I considered, you know, civilians and innocent got in the mix? Yeah. But for the most part, I always just fought and messed with other gang members.
Yeah.
And I didn't like them. And I know being part of it, that doesn't like make sense, but I decided to step up for myself, and I don't regret it, because I would see a lot of these people that in junior high and in high school that I was going to school with. And yeah, they were going to prom and dances and parties and movies together, and it was all great. But I would see those guys get punked every now and then by these guys. Like, for example, you know, like little iPod, the little one.
Yeah.
What is it, Nano or something like
that?
Yeah.
Like the first one with the screen.
Yeah. So I would see one of the guys be like, "Oh, let me borrow it. I'll give you next period." And then that gang member wouldn't return it. And he would say something like, "Oh, somebody took it, man.
Someone broke it, or like, and
that guy had to take that.
Yeah.
Or you know, these other dudes would be hitting on the guy's girl, and the guy, I would see them just be there and take it.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, you got a big bag of hot Cheetos, here, give it to me. And then he would act like, oh yeah, I'm done here. And it's like, what does that do to the psyche of an individual?
Yeah.
Like, where are those kids or teenagers at the time, right?
Like, where are they now?
Yeah.
How did that affect them long term?
Yeah. And you know what? I saw a video recently of this was in Anaheim, and some dudes recording somebody who was like, oh, this guy tried to call my son into his car, and he's just recording this guy and saying it, and I'm like, bro, kick his fucking ass.
Yeah, like, why? Just pull your phone out. And
why are you recording
what are you doing?
this, dude? Why are you not? Do you not fight? Do you not know how to
protect your kids,
protect yourself, protect your kids? Do you not like
have that sense of
pride? And so I was like, that's where those kids are at now.
Yeah.
Right now, yes. While I was getting, not having that much great of time during high school, not going to the proms and the parties and all that because nobody wants to be affiliated with that. Well, guess what? I've never got punked.
Yeah.
And
I bet after, like, I know you mentioned abuse growing up. I'm sure that feeling of like, no one can hurt me anymore is so empowering because you spend your whole life as you're a kid. You know what I mean? You're a kid. You have no control over things. I know we've talked about it before. Use your father, correct?
Yeah.
So like your father is like someone who is your role model, someone you're supposed to trust, someone you're supposed to, you know what I mean, confide in. And being abused from a young age from someone that you put so much trust and respect in, I'm sure being able to change that and be like, no one is ever going to do this to me anymore is so empowering and almost like addicting.
Yes.
I feel like, because I've, not the same situation, but like, in the same ballpark, I understand having that sense of control and what that sense of control does for you. It's like so addicting, and you're just like, I'm never gonna let that happen again.
Yeah.
And you're like determined that is the case. You know what I mean?
And that you hit it right on the nail, because that's another thing that it took me a while to realize why. Okay, yeah, you were in the gang life and you say you didn't want to do it, but why were you so in it? Well, because now I had the power. Now I wasn't a little kid that would be physically abused, and now I can fight back. Now if anybody messed with me or my friends, and I would always take it to the next level. And it spiraled kind of like out of control. I remember I got stabbed when I was 15. I got shot at for the first time around that time. I bought my first gun at 15. I was selling, guns and drugs, because sometimes we would use the guns and then we're like, well, let's get rid of them. Well, let's try to sell them or something. And not to justify it, but like when I was selling drugs, I wasn't buying like fancy stuff like all the other guys
like fentanyl and stuff like that.
I was going home and feeding my brother and my sister. Yeah. Because like I said, I was the second oldest. And nobody told me that it was my responsibility, but I'm like, look, like, okay, I got to make this money. Okay, feed my brother and my sister. I got to take this, make this money and buy us stuff, because I used to get made fun of because I would wear the same clothes over and over. And whenever my parents would have money, they would get like the knockoff versions of a Vans or whatever. And I would get made fun of that. So it was like a losing battle at all fronts, at school, at home. And so now I had the power to do something. And the funny thing is, like, we sold everything as a group, but I would sell weed, right? Yeah. And it was so funny back then. You were like a criminal. You were. Yeah.
Now it's like normal. Yeah. Now you can go to a fancy weed shop and they show me your ID and you're like, I'll take the gummy bears.
Yeah. And now if you're in that market, right? Now you're a businessman. You're an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, 100%. But when I was doing it, you were the scum of the scum.
Yeah. There's people still in prison like now for selling weed back, which is crazy because it's not even like federal offense like that.
Yeah, they were giving hard time. Like I have friends who are doing double-digit times for the stuff that they were doing, and I'm like, that is crazy. But I never got caught. Doing anything. I was as smart as I possibly could. Like for example, I would go to the community college and take CSI classes. So
how could I get away with this shit?
So I was like, okay, what are they looking for? And that's how. I found out like, hey, a fingerprint, depending on the humidity, on the surface, on how oily your fingers are, it can last 5 seconds or it can last years. So, and what are they looking for when it comes to weapons or any stuff? So I would have a certain protocol anytime we would do something crazy. But it at one point I was like, look, now I have a crew within the gang. I'm controlling that crew. And we were doing like 90%, if not 100% of all violent crimes that gang was producing. I was leading it. But again, it kind of got out of control. But then one day I admitted it. I was like, look, this isn't it. I got to take myself, not just myself, but I got to take myself and the crew out. And
your core small group within that. Okay.
Yeah. And I remember I gathered us up in my friend's garage and I was like, look, guys, I fucked up. I led us down a path that is not right. I'm not saying we have to be bitches and get stepped on or anything like that. I'm not saying
that's such a hard transition to make though, like trying to exit or pull out of a gang, especially when you're like one of the higher ups, you know what I mean? Like I'm sure that's, especially with all the enemies I'm sure you've already made. So it's like, even if you're fully out, people are still going to hate you. People are still going to have it out for you. Did your family ever have any negative things happen to them because of your affiliation with the gang?
My sister, because now she's 2 years younger than me, so now she's also in high school, and there was a party that somebody called me, and I wasn't there. They're like, hey, they came looking for you. They thought that you were at this party because they saw your sister was here, and then I hid your sister because they were like, oh yeah, well where's the sister? And we don't know what they wanted with my sister. Maybe they just wanted to say like, "Hey, call your brother over here." Or
you don't know how aggressive or non-aggressive it was. Yeah,
but they hit
That's
her.
Still scary though.
Yeah, that's still scary. And I remember when that happened, I drove to the party and I didn't know who it was. I asked questions, but I showed up and I had a bulletproof vest.
You're like ready to go.
And I was like, no, like this is
especially when it's your family. It's like we don't mess with that. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? that's also another reason I was like, look, this has to stop. So when I got out, I did know like, hey, some gangs are because we did create a lot of enemies. You know, they're not going to accept it. Some will, and the ones that don't accept it, we have to. I told them we were going to give them a chance. I'm going to talk to them, and if they don't want to listen, then we're not doing this fucking fight each other back and forth. No, it's end all be all. Yeah, and you know, and that's what we did, and that's what I had to do. And you know, one of the funny things is that what I realized is that a lot of people are gangsters and tough, or not even just gangsters. A lot of people are tough and they talk all this shit, but when something happens to them, they go to the cops.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm not a snitch, I'm not a whatever, but
as soon as they get shot, they're like, I'm a snitch. It was him. Yeah.
And again, you have to be. I was doing dumb things, but I was being as smart as I possibly could. And at the end of the day, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So with that being said, I got out. I got all my friends out for a second. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to stay out, and some 100%. Of those people did go back in. Yeah. One of the guys didn't go back to the gang, but he got back into a crew that was into heavy crime, and they failed in a bank robbery. Now he's doing, you know, federal time. Yeah. One of the guys got lost in drugs. 2 of them did get out, and they're doing great. But as we were getting out, I made everybody go back to school, and if you weren't allowed back into school, I told them you have to do continuation.
It's kind of cool how like you were a leader even after the fact. Like you like led them through doing some maybe not so good things, but then after the fact you're like led them through like, hey, make sure we're still doing this. So it seems like you still like kept that leadership role going even after technically you were like not a part of the gang, you know?
Yeah. And what else? Oh yes. But we're still selling drugs. So like I had a full-time job. I had a full-time job, and I worked at this company. I won't say the name, but I would be in the shipping department. So when a airplane engine would come in, I would take it out of the crate. They would the mechanics would ask for a list of parts. I would be in there, get all their parts, they would fix it, and then I would put it back in the crate properly and ship it out. And it felt good having a 9 to 5. Yeah. But I would make more money on a Saturday night
it's
than
not
like
the
2
same.
weeks
Yeah.
at the job.
You're like, do I want clean money or do I want providing money? You're like,
So during this time, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing it. And then I decided to go into the military. I've always wanted to go in the military. So I remember I was all scared, and I had this like little pre-speech that I made up in my head. I walk into the recruiting station, and I'm like, and I'm pretty sure I like talked all fast. I was like, my name's Angel Cortes. I saw that IEDs kill a lot of soldiers. I want to do something about IEDs. Go after the people, or go after the IEDs.
You literally walked in and said, hey, I really want a petition for the most dangerous job you have. Yeah. Like, please, specifically, that's what I want to do. And they're probably like, who the fuck is this crazy guy? Like, what is wrong with you? Go home.
Both of them were just looking at me like, what the fuck?
Where did this come from?
Yeah. So, and I was like, oh, but I'm only 17. And that's like, oh, you're okay. Yeah. You can join at 17. Actually, you have to be 17 and a half with a parent's signature, and you can go in. So I was like, oh shit. Okay. And they're like, when are you 17 and a half? I was like, the last month. So let's do this.
What was the time gap between when you officially were like, okay, I'm done with the gang stuff, and okay, I want to pursue the military? Like, what was that like? Was it a couple months, weeks? Like, did you have time in between where you were just like, I don't know what to do with myself because you were so involved in the gang, and now you're a regular 9 to 5?
No, I was actually first thinking like, hey man, this isn't like the way of there's no long happy, there's no story that has a happy ending with this, right? I mean, maybe there are a few mobsters, gang members, or drug cartel leaders that do have a happy ending, but at the end, it's always chaos. Like
100%,
any movie, Scarface,
every movie,
American Gangster,
it's always a bunch of dead people at the end. Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I was already telling that myself, and then it took a lot of courage to finally admit it to myself, and then say like, okay, I got to tell the guys. Yeah. So throughout that, I think it was like about a year. Okay. And then when I actually got out, it was about 7-8 months. Okay. And then, but it was, those 7-8 months were the most violent months of everything. Because as you can imagine, some people thought we were easy prey. Yeah. Because we're not in the gang.
Yeah. Like your guard's down at this point.
Yeah. And you know, they were wrong. And
they were wrong.
And some of the people,
he's like, I just want to throw that out there. Yeah. They were wrong. And my guard was not down, I promise.
If anything, it was up. So then, yeah, so I joined, and during the process, they were telling me like, oh, this is the job you're gonna do. Well, how many years? And they're like, you can do 2, 3. This is '08, right? 2008.
And this is when you walked into the
Yeah, and so the wars are going. They're in full effect. Then they're like, you can do 2, you can do 3, you can do 4. And I was like, okay, well, like 2 sounds kind of good, but it's not really a long time. 3, yeah, 4. And I was
so
like,
you
okay.
wanted a career out of it. Like, did you go in wanting a career out of it, or did you just go in being like,
I just
want to do it?
I just want to do it, but
Yeah.
I want to be there for a while. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'll do, and they're like, the longest for now right now is like 6 years. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, I'll do 6.
Yeah.
And he was like, he wasn't even fighting me. Like, this,
Yeah, he's
this,
like, okay.
this is a recruiter.
Well, if you're crazy enough to walk in and be like, I want that job, they're probably like, hey, put him in now. Like,
Yeah.
he's got that mentality. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like most people, I mean, you can literally be a cook in the military. You can be a photographer. Like, if you're walking in saying, I want to detect if there's bombs, it's like, oh, okay. Like,
Yeah. And so, yeah, I signed the papers, but during the process, when they were telling me like, hey, these are your benefits, we'll pay for your school. And at the time I'm like, dude, the only thing good I did, like my only good experiences in high school were like PE and math. Everything else, because English was a second language.
100%, yeah.
I wasn't good. Writing sucked for me. Science, I didn't really quite understand, because again, English is my second language.
Yeah.
But math is numbers.
Yeah, numbers and numbers.
And then PE, I was good at it. And then he's telling me, he's like, oh yeah, this is the rank you'll be in when you go in, and this is like, and he was showing like numbers right next to like rank. And I was like, and I stopped him. I was like, what is
What are you
that?
talking about? Yeah.
And he goes, that's your pay. And I was like, you get paid for this?
He didn't even know you got paid for it.
No, because this is what I thought. I thought you went in and the military fed you, gave you clothes in a room, and then
like room and board.
and then boom, and then that was it. So I was like, yeah. So when he said you get paid for this, I remember thinking he's lying. Like, there's no fucking way. You're gonna tell me you also get paid during this and you can make more. And so I was like, okay, whatever.
Most people would be the opposite. I feel like most people would be like, you better be paying me to do this because I might die.
Yeah. And
But you were young.
Yeah. So then I joined, and within, as soon as I joined, I think within less than half a year, I was in Iraq.
And throughout all this, I know you're married with kids. When did you meet your wife? Throughout all this? A long time, right?
Yeah, I met my wife in 2nd grade.
Okay, so she was with you through all of this.
Yeah.
Like whether it was like a friend or a girlfriend,
Yes.
like yeah.
Yeah, she was. I met her in 2nd grade, and she's always been kind to me, and she lived nearby the elementary, and which is actually also by the high school, Garden Grove High School, right? So I would always see her when I would walk to home from home, or I would go to my friend's house, and she had a cousin that lived in the same house as her, and that was the same age as us. So and his name's Rodolfo, and we were all friends. So sometimes I'd just be like, hey, is Rodolfo at the house? And so we always stayed in touch. She's always been a good friend of mine. But I remember one time during summer, I saw her come out, and I had never not looked at her in this specific way. She came out, and I was
at one point she was like your friend's little sister, and then you're like, oh, whoa, that's not my friend's little sister anymore.
Yeah, she came out, and I was like, oh shit, and I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, damn, dude, Annalia's hot. And I was like, bro, no. But all through high school, I tried banging her. She was not having it.
She's like, no.
No, she was like, you're a dog. No, I know how you are. So
it's like, I know you a little too well.
and even throughout all this, like, I can tell from the beginning, I've always cared what her opinion was.
100%. Yeah.
So I would try purposely not to do bad things when she was around. Because I didn't want her seeing that side of me, and it so, but she was always there for like almost everything. She was telling me, she's like, oh, the other day, she's like, remember when my aunt picked you up after a fight and your nose was broken and you were just bleeding everywhere? And I was like, yeah. So
you're like, duh, how can I forget that? That was awful.
So her family was, because they lived so close to us, and I lived so close. They lived so close to the schools. We would always walk by their house, and but for that specific day, I remember after 6th period, they found this other people that didn't even go to that school. They found my class, and they were waiting for me outside. So they're like, oh, let's go fight, and I'm like, fuck, like. I can't get to my friends. They literally waited for me.
All alone.
Yeah. And I was like, well, fuck it, I don't care. And it was so funny because I was like, okay, well, he's older than me. He's bigger than me. I'm like, well, fuck it, whatever. And so I just ran towards him, started punching him. And sooner or later, he like got off balance. And when he got off balance, I started punching him. And I was like, fuck yes. and they were like, no, stand up. No fighting on the ground. No fighting on the ground.
Like, what the hell?
So when they stood us up, I was like, fuck, that was my one chance.
Now he's up again.
And then after that, it was just downhill. I just kept getting my ass kicked the entire time, to the point where I was like, and I don't know when my nose broke, but I was just like, I think it might be better if I just fucking stay down, or not even stay down, because he never knocked me down. I was like, if I just go down, but he wouldn't knock me down. And I was like, fuck this. And then finally they called the cops, and I'm walking, and Annalia's aunt's like, Angel? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you need a ride? And then she's tried to give me like a napkin. I remember thinking like this little.
You're like, this is not gonna do anything.
It's not gonna do anything. My fucking nose is broken. But anyway, she was around for all that. But we actually didn't get married and become like a couple or anything until after I was in the military.
Okay. So you guys weren't together when you first joined the military?
No, I wasn't. I was.
And you went to them in 2008, and in that same year, you were already like overseas. Or what was that time period? Well, like when you walked into the military and you were like, I want to do this.
A year and a half.
Year and a half. Okay.
Yeah, because your basic training, AIT, and all that. So basically, what people know it as boot camp. Your boot camp is kind of takes a couple months. But 100%. Then when I got to my unit, they were like, hey, fucking new guy, tomorrow we're doing day and night demo, which is blowing things up day and night, and we're shooting day and night. Mm-hmm. So pack your fucking shit, because we're going to in Iraq in 6 months.
Yeah. So I'm just not aware like how things are structured.
Yeah.
But since you had a specific role that you wanted to like do in the military, does your basic training consist of that, or do you all do the same thing and then you branch off? Like, how does that work?
Exactly that. We all do the same thing, and then we branch off at your specific MOS job thing.
Okay. And how was that? Like, how was going through boot camp? How was that transition?
Man. Well, I didn't even know how malnourished.
And did you go to Pendleton?
No, because that's Marines. So since I was in the Army, it was a different state. But I didn't know how malnourished I was until we got to boot camp. And as guys are losing weight, I'm gaining weight. Yeah. Because they would feed us 3 times a day. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Like, okay, cool. I thought they were not going to feed us at all.
You're like, this is great.
Yeah. I get 3 fucking meals, and I get a bed, because I for many of my childhood years, I was sleeping on the floor. Yeah. And if we had a couch to sleep on, I remember thinking like that was big time. Like that was fucking huge.
Luxury.
So now I have my own bed. So boot camp for me was very eye-opening, as in, like I didn't realize
what you had been deprived of.
Yeah, what I've been deprived of. And then also realizing, guess what, man? Southern California, what was your world, is not the fucking world. This country is a big place.
I feel like it's so easy to like be stuck in your little bubble, and everyone to just be stuck in their little bubble all the time. And you forget that like not only is like the rest of like the country, but like there's a whole world out there that like most people don't even think of half the time.
Oh, definitely. I always describe it as, if you go to each corner of the United States, it's like going to another country. Yeah. If you go to another country, it's going to another planet.
Yeah.
Because when you go to Iraq and Afghanistan, or I've been to Namibia and Africa, and that's like, it's alien. It's nothing that you are so accustomed to in name brands or TV shows or language or drinks or just customs. It's not
culture,
there.
terrain, like everything is different.
100%.
Had you traveled a lot in your childhood, or was this the first time you had ever really traveled at all?
It was the first time I ever traveled. As a matter of fact, when it was...
So, man, you had a lot of, like, first-time experiences and a lot of eye-opening experiences. You're like, what is this? And you're like, I got to get paid to do all this?
Yeah.
Like, I get paid to have 3 meals. I get paid to have a bed. I get paid to travel.
And almost immediately, I was making more money than all my family members. So what I would do is just send money home.
Like to your mom and your siblings?
Yeah. And like, for example, I put my sister through culinary art school.
Nice.
I would just send my money. And then when I deployed, I mailed my debit card to my mom, and I was like, I'm going to fucking war. I don't
need money for groceries.
Anything.
Yeah.
Like, I get paid on the 1st or the 15th. Like, have it all.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, my deployment in Iraq, when I came back, the only money that was in my account was actually the check I got a few days before I flew back.
So every single check you had ever got for those 6 years went to your mom and your family?
Well, no, for that deployment.
Oh, for that deployment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while guys were racking up, like 35,000.
Yeah, because you don't have to spend any, so it's just like, yeah.
I came back with like the 1,200 that I got.
Yeah.
So joining the military was the best thing that I've ever done, and I describe it as, well, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life, but as a whole, I would describe it as like the best, worst, most depressing, fulfilling, joyful, awful thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot of opposites in that sentence.
It's like a ball of emotion because
100%.
you have these highs.
Yeah.
And then
that adrenaline rush is probably insane. I mean, I fight and it's nothing compared to like, but even the adrenaline I get from fighting, like I couldn't imagine the difference that you guys feel. It's
next level. And when and where I experienced that the most was Afghanistan. Afghanistan, I used to watch like National Geographic documentaries and other war documentaries like Restrepo and stuff like that, and I used to be like, damn, like that stuff is crazy. And then after my time in Afghanistan, that looked like a walk in the park. Was
Afghanistan the first place you went?
No, Iraq was the first place, but Afghanistan was the heavy deployment.
Okay.
I mean, we made national headlines 3 times. There's 2 books written about my time there by other guys.
Yeah.
One of the guys that was with me, he's giving TED Talks. He's a public speaker. He's, some of the dudes are on Fox News and talking about this and that, and everything and anything that I wanted as a fighter, because you want to be tested. I feel sometimes when people say, "Hey, I'm sorry you had to go to war," I always think like, I wanted to. We wanted to, like, what
else do I train for?
And I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's bad to say like, hey, I wanted to go to war, and then I think it was for good causes, but at the same time, was there some fuckery going on? Was some politicians making a lot of money? Of course. And do a lot of veterans feel like they were fucked over by the government? Yeah, but some of us to this day, if we even knew more about it, we would still say, let me go. Because I feel like some people have this warrior spirit that they want to test themselves. They want to test themselves and go fight. So, as you can imagine, I wanted all the action. I wanted the movies. I wanted what we would, but what I didn't understand was it's a 2-way street.
Yeah.
Like, I understood it, but when it started happening, like when I feel
like it's something you can't grasp until it actually happens to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When my friends are dying, when
like right in front of you too, even
they're getting hurt. When I'm washing the brains off a truck because my squad leader's like, hey man, Cortes, because at that point I'm already a sergeant, and they're like, hey, wash the brains off the truck so that none of the other guys see it. And I'm washing it. And then as I'm done, I see little bits and pieces of me, and I'm shake it off. Or there's burnt flesh in my shoelaces because we just dealt with 2 suicide bombers, and there's burnt flesh stuck in my shoelaces. And when the day is done and the fighting is done, I'm looking down and I just like leave it there because as a reminder of like, well, bro, this is real. This is real. This is what's happening.
Not a TV show. It's not a game. Like,
it's not
real.
A game.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, firefight after firefight, like I've been in over 100 firefights easily, and that's not even like a big deal because some of these guys, especially in the invasions, were fucking fighting every single day, multiple days. But when these firefights were happening, and some of us who are not getting hurt and not dying, obviously we felt a certain way. Like we keep winning, we keep fucking shit up. So of course we felt a little cocky, a little, but then when one of us would get hurt, obviously that would fucking, as a whole,
take you down a peg.
The team would go down.
Yeah.
But that high, that's why I always say, war is a drug because I haven't done all the drugs in the world, but war for sure. I've never felt
nothing compares
so high. So many of us are risk takers, like veterans. A lot of my friends are risk takers. A lot of my friends either skydive or ride their fucking motorcycle
constantly
on the freeway,
chasing that high.
And that's what I realized, that I do like martial arts and I do fight. And when I was fighting, yes, because I wanted to test myself as a martial artist. But to be honest, I wanted I'm chasing the dragon.
Yeah. I
want a piece of that high.
Yeah.
And do I kind of get there? Yeah, but
nothing compares though.
Nothing's like it.
Take us through like climbing the ranks, and like what did that, because I know you mentioned you were a special op.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How did the transition from boot camp to that happen? Like what was that transition like?
So I first got into the military as a regular forces, right? I mean, like regular conventional forces, and once I got in and I met my mentor Hugo Vanderwall, who took me under his wing, and what I would ask him, like, dude, why would you put so much energy into me? And he's like, because you were young and willing to listen and learn.
Yeah.
You were a knucklehead.
Yeah.
And I knew you came from a rough area, but you can it wasn't in your face. You wanted to learn. You wanted to change.
I mean, even in martial arts, like being coachable is one of the best like attributes you can have. It's like being coachable, being receptive to learning, and like being open to learning. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, when I was in the military, after my first deployment, now I'm a year and a half. Now I'm learning about working out. I'm learning about this, but I still don't have anything to my name. Like, for example, I wasn't a high school football star. I wasn't a high school wrestling star. I didn't have anything in my name. I've never achieved anything. Well, joining the military, it was a big achievement, but I not won anything. Yeah. And I remember there was this competition. It was called the Best Sapper competition, right? And it was locally done at Fort Lewis, and they were going to have all the units go for it. And I wanted to do it. But at the time, again, I'm going from barely being malnourished for a good portion of my life. Now I'm regaining some of that lost strength or getting strength, but I'm still not an athlete. But I believed in myself, and I didn't know this, but I have flat feet, right? So like duck feet, wide foot, but flat, no arch.
No arch, yeah.
And I kept having these foot problems, and I'm like, fuck. And then I went to the doctor, and they're like, oh, you have shin splints. And I'm like, what the fuck are shin splints?
Those are the worst.
And I
had them for years, and they're so awful.
Yeah, and I had them on both sides.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, fuck, well, they keep getting worse. And then I went to the doctor. They're like, oh, you have a stress fracture. And I was like, fuck. And so they put me on what's called a profile, which means a soft shoe profile, which means you have to, you see the guys in the uniform. So I was in my uniform, but I had running shoes on.
Okay.
So you don't look that tough.
Yeah, you don't have like the big boots on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, you're on a soft shoe profile for 45 days.
Yeah.
And when I went that final time, when I went to the doctor and he put me on that soft shoe profile, he's like, dude, you're flat footed. Like, you need inserts. He's like, I'm gonna.
I mean, to you were probably like, how the hell would how should I know that? Like,
So like,
how was I supposed to know I need inserts? Like,
and that's how I felt. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, I'll get inserts. So I go get inserts, and it was a office off base, and I'm in there, and it's nothing but old people in there.
You're like,
they
am I in the right place?
They literally have like 5 shoes on a rack to pick which Velcro shoe you want, and I'm like,
you're like,
is this where I'm at right now?
Like, damn it.
Yeah.
I'm in deep right now.
So they like do a little like laser scan thing, and then a mold, and then I get the inserts. And then he also said like, hey man, like what shoes are you running with? And I told the doctor, I was like regular running shoes. And he's like, yeah, but like, are they shoes for your feet for you? Yeah. And I was like, no. And they're like, what shoes you get? I was like, I just go to the store, and whatever like hot Nikes are there, I just buy those. They're like, no.
You're like, whatever's on sale is what I get.
Like, you need
that's what I get.
Shoes for your feet, for you, as your runner. So then he's like, hey, go to this store. And I think it was called, like, Runner's Road or something like that. So I go in there, and it's nothing but running shoes. These people, the workers, like, have run multiple marathons or Ironmans. And then they're like, all right, take off your shoes. I need you to run from over there to over here. Oh, wow. And he's like, let me guess. You are flat-footed. You have a wide foot. And you probably have plantar fasciitis.
You're like, I feel attacked, actually. But yes.
I was like, yeah.
You are correct, actually.
I was like, I have all that. And then he gives me a shoe for me. And he's like, okay, try this. And he's like, okay, try that one and try this shoe. And then, but the first one was it. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, I didn't know you needed.
Such a big difference.
Yeah, I didn't know, So for 45 days, I'm in this soft shoe profile. But I want to work out because I know this competition is coming up. So I would be on the stationary Lance Armstrong bike, right? And I would just bike my fucking ass off, and I would lift, and I was just, because people don't understand that this is 2009, 2010, like YouTube and what it is now. I mean, what it is back then. It wasn't what it is now, right?
Yeah, completely
now you
different.
have so many channels with so many experts that tell like, hey, this is how you work
breaking
out. Breaking
stuff down, helping nutrition, weightlifting, cardio. Yeah.
So I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but I was just trying to do all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I want to be in this competition.
Yeah.
But you needed a partner. So when I voiced like, hey, I want to do the competition, I did have a mentor named Hugh van der Walt, but unfortunately he wasn't even in my platoon. He was just another sergeant in the company. And he would just help everybody out. But my direct leadership, they weren't the best. They were really negative people. And I remember they're like, no, you can't even, Cortez, you can't even do this, you can't even do that. So I wasn't really getting much support. And then I was like, I want to do it. And they're like, okay, you'll be. And they partnered me up with who at the time I would describe like that was their golden boy.
Yeah, their trophy boy.
Yeah, this guy was very charismatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people liked him, and he lifted a lot. He was very athletic, and they're like, okay, you'll be with him then, because no one else wants to be his partner, because everyone else knows how tough he is.
Yeah.
And so, and I remember my fucking platoon sergeant the day before, he's like, you better not slow him down. So
you're like, listen here, asshole.
Yeah, so that's kind of. But you know what? I was so used to at that point being treated a certain way.
Yeah.
Right, growing up by my parents, by you name it. So when him saying that, I was like,
yeah, I was gonna say, did that trigger anything in you? Like whether it was like good for your competition or bad? Like does being spoken to like that by like an asshole sergeant or something like that? Like does that do anything to you or no?
What it did? Well. Yeah, I didn't know it, but it would feed me. It would feed that.
So it like helped you almost. Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Oh, cool, whatever. Like I again at this time I have nothing in my name to even suggest that I even have a chance to keep up with this guy, right? So the first day goes, and my partner, he got hurt halfway through.
Oh wow.
And they're like, oh, Cortez, you're done. And I'm like, no, like, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. And they're like, okay. Okay, you'll be the third on this team. You're the third, but this team is still going to be graded as a team. You're just going to follow them, okay, if you can keep up. And even that, they were like, if you can keep up.
It's like little blows.
So then I kept up, and I wanted to go faster than them. And because there's like all these events, and you're like rucking multiple miles. For what people don't know, rucking is you would have 45 pounds minimum on your back, and you're doing like 10, 12 miles. And then you have an obstacle course that's like 16 obstacles of like crazy stuff to do. And then you have to run here and do that. So as we're doing it, I want to go faster. And one of the cadres like, okay, if you can catch the next team, just go with them. And then I would do that. And then they're like, okay, fine, just go to the next team. And they were like, okay, you can keep doing that if you go to the next team. But then I got to the team who was number one, and they're like, fucking just go, dude.
Yeah.
And so by the time I get done on the first day, I don't see anybody for another 45 minutes.
Damn. So you blew them all out of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they were over here saying, if you can keep up.
Yeah.
You're like.
and you would think like, hey, that would be like a good thing. But as I'm ending, when I end, I see my squad leader there, and the first thing he tells me is, I don't want to hear anything about no shin splints anymore. And I was like, cool.
Oh, fuck me then. Okay.
Cool. So then we still have 2 more days, and they're like, hey, but now, because again, this is all of these combat engineer units that gather up, right? And so the top sergeant in a company is the first sergeant, right? So all these first sergeants obviously are doing this dick measuring contest because they want their guy to win.
Yeah.
And one of them said, hey, Cortez doesn't have a partner, so he can't continue anymore, even though they saw me beat their other guys. So then they were like, okay, but if someone else got hurt, team up with him. So I teamed up with this other guy from this other unit, and we do day number 2, and I'm basically... I'm being nice to him, but at the end of the day, my sergeant was like, I saw you basically like dragging the guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you kind of needed like help and stuff like that. And then I do the third day with a different guy, because that guy backed down overnight. He was like, I'm done. So my third guy that I got partnered up with, by the time we were done and they added up my points and his points, we got like 13th place. But throughout all these 3 days, everybody was seeing that I was passing everybody. Everybody was seeing that I was, I would fail some things or maybe not score as high. But I remember when the competition was done, I shook everybody's hand, and the guys who were number one, one of them like put his head down and like shook my hand, and other guys were like, "Dude, you should have got fucking number one." Yeah. And I felt good about that, even though I placed like whatever place it was. We weren't even top 10, right? I felt good about myself, and I remember thinking and feeling like, if I can do this, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And so I go back to the company. They gave me a day off. I go back, and I'm thinking like, well, I didn't fucking win. Some people might say something or whatever. All these people who were like never really talk to me are like, "Oh, what's up, Cortez? Fucking, I heard you killed it." And I was like, "What?" And one of my buddies was like, "Bro, you don't know this, but every time you got to a checkpoint, the first sergeant was telling everyone where you were at."
Yeah.
So throughout these 3 days, while you're sucking,
they were all keeping
no sleep,
like updated.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were updating the company. Everybody was like, "What the fuck?" So then I told myself, I was like, you know what? I want to join the special operations community. I want to drop my packet. So basically, you have to have a physical. You do some paperwork, and you drop this. It's called the packet. You drop your packet to ask for a spot in the selection process. And at that point, people were starting to believe like, okay, maybe Cortez does have something to offer. They were like, but my leadership was like, don't drop the packet. Don't drop the packet. We're going to go to Afghanistan, and they're saying we're going to be attached to Special Forces. And I didn't believe him, but then I started seeing the Special Forces guys, and you can't miss them. They have green berets. They're the only ones who have green berets. And not to mention, when they walk around with a certain demeanor, by a certain look. Like Special Operation guys, you see them, and you're like, fuck, dude. Like,
you're like, they're the real deal.
They're
like
the real deal.
Yeah.
Because they walk around, they're not doing it on purpose. They have earned this respect, and you walk around so a certain way. So I was like, oh shit, like they're talking to our leadership. I guess this might happen. And what I got involved with my company was, it's called Village Stability Operations. So with these the things, how they were fighting in Afghanistan, they would build big bases, and they would go out and patrol, and then come back to the big bases. But because Afghanistan is such a tribal place, we're not going to get far as earning the respect of the elders by leaving. So they're like, we need a team to be in there, fight in there, and stay there.
Yeah. Almost like stake your ground there. Yeah.
Definitely. So they're like, but a special forces team isn't that big, right? They're only like me. I've worked with teams that were at the time only like 8 guys.
Yeah.
But sometimes
you need more people than that if you're gonna. Yeah.
So they're like, hey, how about we supplement with some regular forces, so we boost up the numbers, and we don't have to put 2 special forces team in one valley. We can just do 1 and then supplement. This way, we can have more special forces teams around in the mountains, the eastern part of the country, right? And so that's what happened. We got put in there, and I remember when we landed there, they had just gotten the day before in a huge firefight. The elevation was at we were living at 7,500 feet elevation, and the guys were that special forces team was on their way out, and they the first day we went out with them, they drove us out to a place where there was parts of a military vehicle that were in like stuck in the ground, where their friends had just got blown up and died. And this is when we got there, it was winter time, right? And the springtime is like the fighting season. People don't know this, but during the winter, it's really cold. The Taliban doesn't want to fight. We don't want to fight. Yeah. So spring comes, and it's the fighting season. So spring's about around the corner, and the guys were like, that's what's waiting for you in spring. You need to be ready. And they were trying to train us up in certain things in the area before they left. And when spring hit, it was like all day, every day. We dealt with suicide bombers. We dealt with bombs on the roads, and I was pulling them out with my bare hands. We would fight.
Yeah, explain to them exactly what like your job was, because I don't think we've touched on that. Like, I know in the beginning, but what did you do when you were there?
So IEDs, or improvised explosive devices, are homemade explosives, right? And they would make these bombs and put them in the roads or put them in the walls or you name it. These people, just because they don't know what Starbucks is or how to work an iPad, does not mean they're dumb. These are not dumb people. These are very intelligent individuals, and
also very different technology than we have. So it's like figuring out foreign weapons. Yeah,
and so they would. And my job was to find them because they were killing soldiers to huge proportion of numbers. Like when it comes to firefights and like gunfire and stuff like that, and they were so powerful. Like they would slice a military a bulletproof multi-ton vehicle, slice it in half like it was nothing, and my job was to find them. And people think like we have robots to find them. No, you know how we would find them? I would have a fucking mine detector.
I literally was gonna say, when I was little, I remember like seeing movies where they have like literal metal detectors and they're just like trying to survey it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if you just step on one that you miss? Like that's just it.
I would literally do that, but sometimes it would just be a gut feeling. And with time,
which is crazy, that intuition.
And I was right a lot of the times, and you know, I got good at it, and you know, I'm over here pulling fucking bombs with my bare hands.
Oh yeah, tell them about those stories when you said you and your friend used to be dumb and
so
so
you know, war is a drug, right? And if you get in a gunfight, well, that's awesome, and then the next gunfight better be the same or if not more. And we were these fucking war junkies. And one time we found an IED, and one of my boys was like, how we detonate these IEDs in a safe way is we have a time fuse on an explosive, and we set it and we run back, and it gives us enough time, it goes off. Or we attach explosives to like shock tube, and this like line can be like 500 feet or 1,000 feet, and then you blow it up, safe distance.
So that's the only way to like.
Well, that's some of the ways.
Okay, but that's the main way.
Yeah, safe ways. And my friend was like, I'm going to put a grenade on it. Well, if people don't know, you only have like 3 seconds on a grenade.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. He cut a fucking hole on the ID, and I have this on GoPro. He fucking pulled the pin, dropped it, and fucking ran. And the ID was on like a little hill.
Yeah.
So he just ran down the hill, and you just see him running, and you see a gigantic fucking explosion.
I guess at least it was downhill, so he probably picked up speed a little faster.
Yeah.
If it was uphill, it might have not been
so
good.
So you see that, and you're like, well, I got to top that.
Yeah.
I need to top that.
I could do better than that.
I got to figure it out. And so I remember we found an ID, and I was like, and one of our guys almost fucking stepped on the trigger mechanism. And like his fucking boot print is like right next to where it was at. So they're like, hey, we're just going to, you know, put some C4, or we're going to have one of our Afghan counterparts go handle this one, right? And I was like, nah, I'll go do it. So I fucking crawl up to it, I put it, and I crawl back. The thing is, why it's sketchy is because these IEDs either go off by a pressure plate, which means you step on it, and it goes off, or command. So they'll have a remote.
Oh, so if they see you going near it, okay.
So when I said, I'll walk up to it, I don't know what the trigger mechanism is.
So someone could literally be watching you, waiting for you to walk up to it, and they're like, that's crazy.
But I just wanted to go do it because I'm like,
measuring contest?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I could do that better.
And then one time I went inside a fucking cave, and like I came out with an ID, and I easily could have attached rope to it. I know a proper way how to attach, you know, you tie a knot, and from a safe distance, you just pull that bad boy out. So if it is booby trapped,
you're not hurt. Yeah.
You're not hurt. But I was like, nah, I want to do it.
Oh my
just God. To say, hey, I did it. And I remember as I'm pulling, I'm like, if this goes off,
you're dead. That's it.
Not only am I not dead, but I was like, well, it ain't my problem anymore.
Like, I mean, I guess it's true.
That's how
it is what it is.
Fucking we lost our minds, and we lost our mind. I would purposely stand up on top of a truck during a firefight longer than they would have to, so I can draw fire, and we can
like bait them
firing.
into
we would all do that. We would all take.
Yeah, I bet your like perception of reality totally gets more like the longer that you're there, and the longer war is just all you do. You know what I mean? Like everything is just a firefight. You're probably just like in a completely different mind frame than you are here. Yeah,
definitely. Like halfway through the deployment, the idea of going home was like,
you're like, that's not happening.
That's like a Disney movie.
You're like, that might never even happen.
It's fake.
Yeah.
No, like this is my life. This is gonna be my life forever.
And I feel like you have to be like super engulfed in what you're doing to really be successful over there and like not lose your mind. You know what I mean? You have to be all in. You can't be like, I want to go home. Like I feel like that's like almost like a moment of weakness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you can't have that when you're constantly just under firefight.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, so then again, I had a special operations deployment, but I wasn't in the special operations.
Yeah.
And some of the guys, so we would have these razors, these Polaris razors, you know what I'm talking about? The off-road vehicles?
Yeah.
Like the two-seaters.
Yeah.
We would have guns mounted on them. And we would patrol sometimes just 3 razors. So that means 6 guys total.
Yeah.
We would go in this valley looking for trouble, and we would find it. And during missions, like...
When you say looking for trouble, do you mean like looking for IEDs or like looking for people?
Looking
or
for people.
Both. Okay.
A little bit of both. And... you know, during missions, some of the older guys, special forces guys, would be like, Cortez is with me. And anytime we would do like serious night stuff or whatever, they'd be like, oh, Cortez is on the roster.
I bet that felt good.
And it did, because I was like, okay, if I have the respect as a fighter from these guys who've been in the special operations community
for a long time,
a long time, then, you know, maybe I have something.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I was like, that's it, I'm going to drop a packet. But instead of dropping a packet for special forces, one of the special forces or SF guys used to be a ranger. And he's like, yeah, I was a ranger. And then I dropped the packet. And I'm like, you know what, man, being a ranger sounds more for me. And so then I dropped my packet. And I went to selection. And I remember pre-selection was called pre-RASP. So the selection is called RASP. The pre-RASP, I think we had like 213, and the graduating class was like 96.
Wow.
So like 50% or over 50% just fucking gone throughout the process. But that selection process really, again, I had some stuff that maybe say like, hey man, maybe you got something in you, right? Like, I'm going against dudes who look like fucking Superman, who look like Thor, dudes who they're like, oh yeah, I was a fucking D1 wrestler, or I was I played at fucking Penn State.
Lifetime athlete, like lifetime,
They're like, I played at Penn State. I didn't get picked up by the NFL,
so I came here.
I'm here. And I'm like, bro, yeah, you look like a fucking.
You're like, I can tell.
Yeah. And so then some of these guys are quitting, and they're quitting while I'm still in there, and I realized mental toughness goes a long way, 100%. You know. And that's when I found out, like, and when I graduated, I was like, hands down, I have now leveled up.
Yeah, like mentally taking that step. Yeah.
And how I perceived myself, because even then I you know, for the vast majority of my life, I wasn't anything, you know, and now I am something, and so now how I perceived myself was different. And at this point, I'm 24. So it took me till I was 24 years old to be like, you know what, man, you do deserve this.
Yeah, like I am somebody, like I do matter. Like,
yeah.
How was, so the time periods where, because there were time periods in between that where you came home, right, for like little stints of time.
Yeah.
How were those little stints of time in between the chaos of literally waking up to a firefight? Like coming back, when did you have your first kid? When you were
when I came back. Oh, when I was 20.
20? Okay.
Yeah.
So you were even, you know, away from your family and kids when you were doing that. How was coming home and like seeing your kids, seeing your wife, like being in normal, like just normal everyday life after just experience like washing brains off of a truck?
You know what? It was, some guys have a tough time.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what it is. I'm actually still trying to figure that out. But I would take it pretty well. But there's things that weren't normal. Yeah. Like, for example, I had a rifle and a grenade launcher, right? So like dudes who play Modern Warfare, like Call of Duty and all that,
yeah,
like they know what grenade launcher I'm talking about, right? So I would sleep with my grenade launcher with a round in there, the safety off, and ready to go.
Like just on you?
Yeah, right next to me.
Yeah.
Like right next to me.
Which is, I'm sure, how you would sleep when you were sleeping overseas.
Yeah, and no, but I mean, that part is overseas. So
okay.
That's how I slept overseas.
Oh, okay.
But when I came home, and God bless Anelia's heart, she like never gave me shit about it. I had a rifle, and I loaded up my AK, and I put it right next to, like literally right next to me where I laid, and she didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then after a while, instead of putting it right next to me, I laid it against the wall,
Yeah.
And then after a while, I put
She
it,
like slowly let you work through
Yeah.
decompressing that and letting that go. Yeah.
and then I put it in the closet, and then
Yeah.
one day I just put it away.
Yeah.
And the entire time she didn't say anything. She wasn't like, "Yo, bro, that's not fucking normal.
Yeah.
Stop that."
Yeah.
She was.
She didn't make you feel bad about
No.
it. She didn't make you feel crazy. Yeah.
No, she was super supportive about everything.
She's like, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm gonna let him do his thing.
My entire military career, she didn't give me any trouble. She was super helpful. Any way that anything that I needed, she would go do. And like if I'm preparing for this selection or for this school, for this exercise, she would, make my meals, have my uniforms ready, go to the store and buy this or buy that. Or if I forgot something, she will mail it to me.
I bet that also felt nice after having not the most, sound childhood. It's like having someone who's able to hold the fort down for you while you're, doing what you need to do.
Oh, definitely. And that which made me like love her even more and put my guard down, because my dad, how my dad and my uncles were, I remember thinking, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
Like they would smoke a lot. I remember thinking, I don't want to be a smoker. So I wasn't. I'm not. I've never smoked. Never been like a smoker. Yeah, I've smoked like weed or like maybe my friends like, hey, here's a little cigar or whatever. Yeah, but I'm not a smoker.
A smoker, yeah.
Same with drinking. Like, I have a drink right here, but like they would drink all day, every day.
Yeah, like a constant, like alcoholics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad, I have siblings, there's 3 different women that my dad was with, and my dad was a womanizer, and that's who he was, right? And he would beat my mom, and so I remember thinking, like, I'm never gonna beat.
It's almost like you didn't have role models. You had people that you didn't want to be like.
Yeah.
So you knew what you didn't want to be. You were just looking for what you wanted to be. Yeah.
Yes. And one of the things that I never considered, and it took me, and I know Leah helped me with this, is that, I wouldn't beat ladies, but like that womanizing part, I got that from my dad. I got that from my uncles. I got that, and so it was hard to actually love, because I never even saw a good example of what love
you never
is.
had an example of like a healthy marriage or a healthy relationship. Yeah.
So having her be a certain way for the longest time, I didn't know how to even
accept that,
react or talk to her. And it was hard for me to even tell her, like, hey, like, I appreciate this. Like, thank you. And so I didn't even know that. So I'm grateful that throughout those years, she wasn't like, hey, you don't.
And it's really rare to find someone who can help you work through those kind of traumas and those kind of, things that they might not even understand.
Yeah.
And being there for you allows you to open up and allows you to explore that and be like, oh wait, maybe that was because of, what I went through when I was a kid, or maybe that was because of this. Like, and I'm sure this is stuff that did you reflect on this stuff while you were serving, or was it like, it was all after, right?
It was all after.
Yeah.
It was all after, and honestly, I don't know how I fucking still stayed married throughout all the years.
You're
because
like, God bless her.
You are, I say that all the time, because like you are gone so much. Even when you're back in the States,
You're gone. Yeah.
You're gone.
Yeah.
Like you're either at a school, at a training exercise,
Yeah.
or at the base.
Yeah.
And if it's the weekend, what are you doing? You want to go hang out with your boys.
Yeah.
So even like, I missed the birth of my son. I missed the birth of my daughter. I've missed multiple anniversaries, funerals. So I didn't deal. I was so focused on that. I was focused on trying to be the best ranger that I could be.
Yeah.
That I didn't take notice of anything but that until after.
So I know you, not to change the subject, but I know you obviously own OG Pumpkin.
Yeah.
I post about it all the time. Why don't you tell everyone, when did you start that? Like, in terms of like timeline when you were in the military, if you started it like during, and like what is OG Pumpkin? I know your son actually designs most of the logos, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But tell them, what does OG Pumpkin represent, and how did your military career inspire that, and everything about that?
OG Pumpkin, depending on who you ask, they'll say it's a cult.
Yeah. Well, you go on your Instagram and you have people everyone got tattoos and everything. I was like, oh, that's branding.
They'll say it's my personal army, little army. It's a movement.
Yeah.
It's some people say, oh, it's not a brand at all, because OG Pumpkin started way before OG Pumpkin, the name came out, before the design came out.
Yeah.
I got out of the military, and at that point I'd already been trained in martial arts, right? And I was like, okay, I need to find a gym where I can train at. And I researched all these gyms, like in California, like Team Alpha Male,
Up in Northern,
Team Oyama, Kings MMA, all this stuff. And then when I came home and I got out during Christmas, so the gyms are closed, right? Because it's the holidays. And I remember I was at my aunt's house, and my aunt doesn't work out at all, right? Occasionally she'll do something, but she's not someone I would go ask for advice when it came to working out. And she goes, you looking for like an MMA gym? You should talk to my neighbor. And I was like, oh yeah. I'll go.
Why not? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go do that. Yeah. So then a neighbor comes up just to say hi to my aunt, and he goes, oh, you train? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, but I'm trying to find a gym. And he's like, oh, I train at Classic Fight Team.
Oh.
And he's like, you should come by. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll come by. And because it was the holidays, not that many people showed up. It was, if I remember correctly, it was myself, my brother, Tyler, and Tyler's brother. And we trained. And then after the session, I was like,
oh, so Tyler was your neighbor? Or your aunt's neighbor?
No, it was.
Oh,
but that guy couldn't even go that day.
Oh, okay.
The neighbor couldn't even go.
Yeah.
And so it was just us, and then I was like, yeah, this is.
You're like, yep, this is it. Yeah.
This is it. And then right next door was Raw Talent Boxing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's when they're the old location, right?
Yep. Yeah. So anyways, and then I'm going to school. I'm going to school to become a registered dietitian. I was terrible at school in high school, right? But I remember thinking, if I can apply myself how I applied myself in the military, I should at least get passing grades.
100%. Yeah.
I was getting A's and B's. And the outside, it looked like I was killing it. Like I'm physically, I can keep up with all the fighters. Like I may not have the fight IQ, and technique, but I push up for push up, punch for punch. So I'm in the outside, it looks like I'm killing it. I'm getting A's and B's. I found a gym. I'm training real hard, but little by little, I was breaking down inside. All this stuff that I put on hold was coming out.
Yeah. And
quickly I realized that I had lost my purpose and I had lost my community, and I needed to get that back. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start inviting the veterans from my gym, my veterans from my school to come out and hang out and watch the UFC fights. Yeah. And that's what it was. I would pay for the pay-per-view. I would buy the beer and the pizza, and we would hang out. And I was doing this. This is when the time period, this is 2016, 17. Okay. And this is when the UFC kind of like started going from, instead of just one pay-per-view every now and then.
They were rolling them out.
They were rolling them out. So I will.
Almost every weekend you had
So I kept doing that. And I did that for years. And then I built a community. And then people were seeing like, oh shit, like, Angel created a group. And then I met other guys who also wanted to create a group. And they were like, bro, we've tried to have people kick it, but no one wants to come and hang out. Some people think you're a bitch if you extend the hand, like a grown man extending the hand to someone else. Be like, hey man, you want to basically tell them you want to be friends.
Like your ego.
Yeah. And they're like, oh well, no, fuck that, no.
Yeah.
So I did that for all the way to 2019, and then my wife was like, I'm pregnant. We have a third baby coming.
That's your youngest?
Yeah, my youngest. And she was like, we're keep going negative to the account, or we barely make rent. Like, you have to stop doing these events. Like,
can't afford to do them. Yeah,
we can't do it. And I was like, well, she's right, but I you're telling me I have to now give up my purpose, my community. I felt so empty before it. That period before where I found my purpose in my community and the military. That time frame was like one of my lowest low, besides my childhood. So I didn't want to go back to that. Yeah, and I'm like, well. By now, I had gained a small following on social media because I was sharing the combat footage of the deployments that I was just talking about. And these were getting like millions and millions of views. Yeah. So I started gaining a following, and anytime my friends who were veterans and owned a company, if I shared a picture or a T-shirt of something, they'd be like, oh shit, is this yours? And I'm like, no, it's my friend. Go buy it. And based on that, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should create my own stuff. Yeah. But I didn't want it to be this generic, fucking
train hard, fight tough. Yeah, like the typical like military stuff. I
didn't want that. I'm like, I want something that means something to me. And if people were to go on my Instagram and see the combat footage or pictures, I have like a skull bandana, skeleton gloves. And I would take a mask over there, and I'm not the first one, nor will I be like the last to do that. Yeah, people have always done some type of war paint or something like that, or bandana or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I have a thing for Halloween. And then I was watching The Office with my wife, and my son brings the pumpkin, and he's like, here. And I'm like, oh, this is it.
Thank you.
This is it.
You are now an employee.
And I was like, okay, I'll make 200 stickers. And within 200 within 2 hours, those 200 stickers
All
were
sold
gone.
out. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, now I got something going on. So then I just wanted enough money to fund the UFC pay-per-views, the food and the pizza for the veterans. That is all I wanted. But while this is happening, now it's COVID's around the corner, right?
Yeah.
And people, my page is kind of getting a following. And I went on Andy Stump's podcast. Andy Stumps, who's a Navy SEAL, been on Joe Rogan's podcast plenty of times. Then I went on Mike Glover's podcast of Fieldcraft Survival. And because they have such huge followings, I went from making like $500-$700 a month for a few months. I was making $10,000-$15,000.
Yeah.
And
that was like off merchandise.
Yeah, off merchandise, and you know, and also Mike Ridland's. I went on Mike Ridland's podcast, and again, $10,000-$15,000.
Well, the good thing for you is that even if looking at that as like marketing, you know, marketing tactics, all of their audiences are going to be the same people who are going to be your audience. It's all a part of the community. Like every person you are getting exposure from or to is a part of the same community as you, which helps a lot when it comes to spreading your cause or spreading OG Pumpkin. Yeah.
And so while I was doing, while that was happening, I realized, like, look, I have all this money. What do I do with it? Believe me, I tried spending it on myself. Like, and by that I mean
I just can't do it.
I took my family, and I was like, we're all gonna get Vans. And then I was like, who needs a jacket? Who needs a sweater? We got sweaters, and we had a fancy dinner. And then I'm like,
now what?
Now what? Like the things that I'm passionate.
You're like,
about,
I don't need more shoes. I don't need more. Yeah,
I don't. So you know what I did? I would, in the peak of COVID, when people were losing their jobs, I would go and drop off thousands of dollars of food to food banks. I would take Target cards and put $400 on it and scratch the barcodes and been like, if you have kids or the elderly, if you need to buy them something, buy them something. Oh, wow. I would do that. And then I'm like, okay, what else can I do? And then I started doing bigger events. I would buy vehicles that we can shoot and to from. And it was a veteran event. Yeah. And so I would rent the whole bay. I would get a taco guy. I would buy 2 or 3 cars from junkyards, and we would shoot, you know, from the cars, inside the cars. And where I got this idea was because at the time I met this guy, Michael Dowd, he's been like a big brother to me. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he at the time worked for another company, a shooting company. And so I went to this shooting course, and as you can imagine, you can only have 2 people in the car when you're doing shooting drills, right? So that means if you have students of like a class of 15, the other guys are chilling. Yeah. And I realized guys were talking and becoming friends.
Yeah, like building that community. Yeah.
So some of the people that didn't want to go to the UFC fights just sit down. Maybe they're like,
you can get them to go to those things. Yes. Yeah.
So then next thing you know, I would have like 60 people. Yeah. At these events, and the goal wasn't to shoot from the fucking cars. The goal was to bring everyone together. Yeah. And it worked because dudes, I saw them hanging out afterwards and going to like the club or the bar or lifting together.
Yeah, like that. Those connections would like build outside of that circle. Yeah.
And I was doing that, and then I was also sponsoring, college kids and high schoolers who wanted to be in the special operations community. I would say like some funny things like, okay, send me a picture of your contract, and then I would be like, flip me off or something, just so I know it's a real contract, instead of people can just like Google Navy SEAL contract or something and just like print it out and be like, here. Yeah. I wanted them to do something funny with it. And so I would buy them the boots and the rucksacks for them to train.
I feel like anytime, like just hearing your life story, anytime you like profited or made money off of something, you never kept the money for yourself. When you were in gangs selling drugs, like you were providing money for your family. When you were in the military, you were sending your literal debit card in the mail back to your family. Like now you start OG Pumpkin, like not even with the like goal of like making money or like making it a business, but just to raise enough money to help out and build a certain community. Yeah. And then now you're just like, you know what I mean? Like helping other people out. It seems like I feel like a lot of people that I know that grew up in poverty. I didn't grow up in complete poverty. We didn't have a lot of money, but I feel like you can go one of two ways if you grow up in poverty. Some people, when they grow up in poverty and then they make money when they're older, they're more selfish with their money and they hoard their money. They're like, I know what it's like to be in poverty and I will never let that happen again. And they become even like kind of selfish, you know? And then there's people who are like you, who is like, you know what it's like to struggle. You know what it's like to be in those depths, you know? And for you, it seems like you don't want anyone else to be that way.
No, and that's exactly what it is. And, you know, it's from like the beginning when I joined the military, all I ever wanted was to be loved, to be part of a group, to have a purpose, and that is it, you know. Yeah. And when you grow up a certain way, that becomes normal, even though now I know better that people are supposed to eat, you know, you can have 3 meals a day, you can sleep in a bed, that's normal. But for me, I didn't tell myself, don't accept nicer things. I just, in my head, no matter what I do, anything, and I say it all the time, anything past rice and beans in my house is extra. Yeah. I sleep on a bed, that's extra. All this is just extra stuff. And believe me, I've tried. Like I have tried to spend money on myself, but after a while, I'm like, what?
It's almost like, what am I doing? Like, why am I wasting this money? Like,
we're as far as I know, this is a one-way street. This fucking life is a one-way street, and time is not coming back. And what are you gonna do while your time is here? And I can either fucking ball out and have a great life, or I can help people, and that's what I've been doing. Like when I got out, I remember I was sharing, like my troubles of my transition, my how I was doing, you know, like, hey, now I'm going to therapy, guys, because and I used to get fucking shit on.
I was going to say, I'm sure you got a lot of shit, because I don't really hear many like veterans or anything being super, super vulnerable when it comes to that, just because you are taught to be so like, I'm tough. Like I'm not soft. I don't have weaknesses. And I mean, everyone does.
The funny thing is that now, 2024, a lot of people are doing this. All these
it's a lot more open.
Veteran podcasts and people like if you heard some of the veterans on Joe Rogan's podcast, like they are open about their troubles. Yeah. But I'm like, when I got out in 2016, when I was doing
you were a bitch.
I was getting shit on.
You're weak.
Dudes would comment, and these were like special operation guys, and be like, dude, your page is cringe. Yeah. And
I do feel like some people that comment stuff like that are really projecting, though. I think because, like, let's say on social media, like, you can scroll and see something that you don't like and keep scrolling. But, like, I feel like some people are, like, straight projecting. And when you're being vulnerable and you're being open online about maybe even a struggle that they are struggling with, but they are, like, trying to shove down and they're trying to be in denial about, they're probably like, hey, like, you're so cringe. And it's like, are you sure you're just not, like, maybe somewhere deep down you kind of see where I'm coming from, you know what I mean?
And that's how, you know what, you're so right on that, because I remember one of the dudes who was like, bro, your page is cringe as fuck. I remember some other veteran who's a special operations guy was like, agreed to it. And after he got out years later, because he's been doing some big stuff. Yeah. Now I see him expressing and stuff like that.
It takes time to work through stuff like that. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when people like project hatred, especially like on the internet, because you can do it without a name or without a face. Like it's so easy to project, but it's like most likely like you're struggling with something yourself. Like you're unhappy with yourself, because like I said, I can scroll and see something I necessarily don't like on social media. I don't feel the need to like let that person know, like, I hate this, you're an idiot. Like, why do you have to do that? You're obviously struggling with something yourself.
I don't know anyone successful, and I'm not talking about successful as in money. I'm talking about successful as in, like, life. They have people, they love them, and they're in a good place. I don't know anyone who is like that comments stuff like that. So when I see that,
how do you have time to do that anyways? Like,
I know themselves, they are not in a good place.
No,
other people will take that bait and argue with them.
I used to. I used to fire back, and now I don't. I used to, though, and I've learned my lesson. But that's before I understood that. I was like, oh, they're just projecting. Like,
I don't ever argue, but I'm not perfect. Occasionally, I feel froggy. So then what I tell them, and it's always the same thing. I'm like, I don't argue online. If you really want to talk about anything in person or do something in person, and I tell them I train a classic fight team. I train at Raw Talent Boxing or CSD.
Yeah.
And I'm there all the time. Either I'm training or I'm helping teach the kids class.
Yeah.
So we can meet there.
Yeah.
So this day,
And let me guess, you never get anything back.
To this day, no one's showed
You're
up.
like, user not found. They block you.
Yeah. So maybe one day somebody will show up, but
I doubt it.
I
No, I
don't
highly doubt
argue
it.
with anybody. But yeah, I've just wanted to help people. I've and that's what I want to do. That's what I've been doing.
How did you get into being a firearms instructor?
So I was going to school to become a registered dietitian, and it was great. I learned with each semester, I learned a lot about myself and the world. And some veterans, I know, will say things like, "Oh, don't go to fucking school. Academia is filled with this woke culture and all this and this and this and that, or student death.
Gonna brainwash you."
And what I tell them is like, look, can you go into huge debt going to school? Yes, but as a veteran, it's paid for.
Yeah.
So that's eliminated.
Might as well take advantage of that.
Is there a certain side or political side in the school? Yes, but that's if you want to find it.
Yeah.
You will be there. If
and you also have a brain of your own. It's like even if someone is preaching far left or far right, like you have a brain that you can think. You don't have to listen to what everyone's saying. Like that's up to you to decipher whether you want to believe that or not.
And to be honest, the media has been doing a huge disservice, because I remember an incident actually happened at my school that made the news. And I remember while I was walking, there was like 50 students and they had posters. And I remember walking by that and I saw the news. And then later at night, my aunt was like, "Hey, your school's on TV." And based on the camera, they made those 50 students look like it was the whole school. Yeah. Meanwhile, there's thousands of students walking around minding their own fucking business. Yeah. So if you want to go to school, like I went to school to become a registered dietitian.
Yeah.
It was great. I learned a lot about myself, the world, and a lot of hard classes that I didn't think would be that I would have to take. I'm like, I'm just trying to tell people to eat healthy.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm taking organic chemistry, biochemistry, microbiology, human anatomy classes. And so I'm learning a lot about myself, the world, and it was great. But, I mean, it wasn't it's not a bad thing, but it's like,
she wasn't like feeding you what you needed.
It wasn't.
It wasn't fulfilling anything.
No, and one day I heard a podcast, and I was supposed to be on. Oh, I was on this podcast, but I just like decided to listen to the episode before, just so I can kind of see what I was gonna get myself into.
Yeah.
And it was a company that was like based in LA, and it's actually Michael Dowd where he used to work.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So when I went over there and did that shooting course, when I came back, Analia would tell you, like, I sounded like a little kid. I was like, and then this guy was there, and that guy was there, and we did this, and we did that, and I was so happy.
Yeah. And
it'd been years that I had not shot. I had all this experience, real world experience.
Yeah.
More than most people. I can say that.
Yeah.
With no issues, but I wasn't doing anything with it. I wasn't sharing it, and so when that company fell apart, and Mike just started Defense Strategies Group, which I work at, and we're based in LA, and we do anything from we worked on TV, National Geographic.
Yeah.
We train the Stallone family, with SWAT teams, Secret Service, all the way to moms and children, right? When Mike asked me to be on board, I was literally one semester away from, to be exact, that last semester wasn't even a full semester. I'm 7 credits away from my bachelor's in nutrition and dietetics. Wow. And I quit.
You said, fuck it.
I quit.
You said, this is not where it's at. Yeah.
Because Mike's like, hey.
Your passion was like ignited right there. It seems like, And
at the same time, Mike said like, hey, I need another full-time guy. Cause
I will say, I've done his courses a few times. And I will say, I've known you for a long time. And like, you're talkative, but you can be a little more reserved at times, depending on the environment. Yeah. I've never seen you so like bubbly-eyed and open and like passionate with how you talk, and you just seem like you're so in your element when you're teaching and like educating on firearms. And it's kind of cool to see like that contrast. Like obviously, like, you love martial arts. I've seen you in different settings, like the gym or like just normal settings, and party and this and that, but I don't think I've ever seen you as comfortable or as happy as like when you are teaching firearm courses.
I love it, because especially with the people that I love teaching everybody. Like when we get to work on shows and all that, it's cool. But what I really like to teach is women. I'm a father of two girls.
100%.
Right. At night when I'm walking around, I think more, am I going to get mugged? I don't think, am I going to get raped?
100%. Yeah.
I wish I can be with my girls
all the time,
every day of their lives.
Yeah.
But the reality is sooner or later, they're going to have to leave, which is why they train jiu-jitsu. I have them train in firearms. So teaching those type of people, teaching SWAT teams who are actually doing raids on like rapists and murderers and all that stuff. Like when I train law enforcement, I always tell them like, hey man, thank you for letting me teach you, because my time's over. You guys are in the mix. You guys are in the shit. You guys see the ugly of the city that we don't. You're dealing with it every day.
Yeah.
So me being able to share something that hopefully helps you.
Yeah.
You know, thank you for giving me that privilege.
Yeah. I think it's awesome because, you know, I've been through my fair share of struggles. And for me, I've always like shot firearms here and there, but like I never knew what I was doing. And I feel like that's the biggest, like when it comes to women, I remember I've been asked to do so many women's self-defense courses, and I'm not anti women's self-defense courses. But I'm not going to lie. I have seen a lot of women's defense courses that are complete bullshit. Like they'll be teaching these women to do certain things. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but like, I have been raped and stuff like that's not going to work. Like I'm going to make, I'm a grown woman. I'm a professional athlete, and I have had many, many years training in martial arts, and I know that my martial arts against an average man in that situation, when they are fueled like that, most likely that's not going to be the case. And I've always been very upfront when I do women's self-defense courses, and I'm like, your best bet is a weapon of some sort. Yeah. Whether that is pepper spray, whether that is a knife, whether that is a taser, whether that is a gun. Like, and obviously like having a gun is going to be your best bet when people might even try to mess with you when they know that, you know what I mean? But I think the biggest difference is, you know, I've owned guns for a while, but I never had the confidence to use it. I never had the like if someone broke in the middle of the night and my life was threatened, under pressure especially, I would not be able to act accordingly. And I think that's the most important thing that I've learned from, you know, going to your courses is like being comfortable and knowing how to safely handle your weapon. Because even if I handle my weapon, what if I hurt myself? Like, what if I do this? And I remember I wouldn't even know if I had a gun on the table. I wouldn't know how to check if it was loaded. You know what I mean? Like I would be scared to touch it. And it's like now being educated, obviously I still respect it and I'm still scared to it. I'm terrified of guns still. But I respect them and I know how to use them. And if I needed to know how to use them, like I'm confident in that. And obviously that's something those skills you have to continue building. That's not something you could just do 3 times and be like, I know what I'm doing. Like, you know what I mean? But I think it's really cool to see and meet the women like at the courses, because it's usually a bigger group, you know? Yeah. And kind of like having a community of that as well. And it's almost like an empowerment, you know, I'm sure for men too, but especially for women, because it's like the biggest deciding factor between our safety sometimes is how we can defend ourselves, and like building that confidence and building that community through the knowledge of just knowing how to do that, you know? Yeah. I'm sure that's like a super cool thing to experience as well. Like as a teacher.
No, definitely. Like we had one of our female students who's come actually multiple times. One day she opened up to us like, thank you for giving me my sense of freedom back, and she told us that she had an attempt at kidnapping. Yeah, that's and I was crazy. Like, oh shit, like, and you know, I'd never met anybody in person who was like, oh yeah, they tried to kidnap me. Yeah, and you know, stuff like that. So it feels good. So as you can imagine, doing that is more fulfilling 100% than trying to tell somebody to eat healthy and they don't want to fucking listen to me.
Hey, you're eating too many carbs. Yeah. Watch your carbs.
And at the end of the day, they don't listen to me. Yeah. Right?
At the end of the day, they're like, but I love rice. It's so good. So I know you mentioned National Geographic. Yeah. You just went recently, right? It was like a few months ago. When was that?
Yeah, well, National Geographic was a couple months ago. It kind of takes a while for the shows to be released.
Yeah, 100%.
So like 2 months ago, the show was released.
And that was in Africa, correct?
No. So the Africa trip was something else, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm all over the place.
National Geographic, I got to work on the show Trafficked.
Okay.
But the Africa trip is again, Defense Strategies does a lot. They don't we don't just do
like self-defense courses. And shooting.
We do consulting. Mm-hmm. Like for example, we had this one weed company had over $1 million of products stolen one year. They flew us out to their site. They said, okay, short term, long term, what do we need for security? Yeah. And if you were to rob us again based on what we have, how would you do it?
Oh, okay.
And we did that. We do have a security side where we're high-end security for travel around the world. On site as well. I don't really do any of that security side. I'm more on the private training. We also do public speaking and
So very versatile.
mentoring.
Yeah.
So like we mentored San Jose State football team.
Okay.
So no firearms training with them. What we did is we took the up and coming leadership in the team and we put them through 3 days of basically camping, and they would have to hike to certain points to find their food.
Yeah.
And they would have to make a fire and do all these team events to build them as a team.
That, yeah.
We did that. We actually just trained the Stallone family for their reality show, the family Stallone. But the Africa trip, what that was a combination of mentoring and teaching techniques. So my job was to embed myself into this motorcycle club, adventure club. So what these people do, I didn't even know this was a thing. They fly to Namibia or any part of the world, and they'll literally drive dirt bikes from one place to another. So what we did in Namibia was the boot camp. So if you can do the boot camp, then you can do all the other adventures, excursions, all that stuff, right? So every day we would ride dirt bikes. In the afternoon, I would teach them how to shoot, how to combatives or survival skills, like tourniquet or make a fire or whatever. And then some mentoring. We would have some bonfires at night and ask certain questions that would, and usually it does, develop some conversation.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys I've come to learn is that they have a lot of money, as you can imagine. If you have time and money to fly to a country
100%.
for like 2 weeks to ride dirt bikes, and a lot of these guys were lacking community within or brotherhood within their
like
lives.
The connection.
Yeah. Like one of the guys was like, "Oh yeah, I've been in this company for like 15 years and we made so much money, but my coworkers don't even know that I know how to ride dirt bike."
See, that's crazy.
And now I feel closer to you guys going
within a short amount of time.
And so that's what I did in Africa.
Yeah. So when it comes to like your firearm courses and your little group of 3 that teaches, right? So it's like you, Mike, and Zach.
Yeah.
Do you find that like everyone you meet, and especially people you work closely with, have complete different experiences within the military and within what, you know what I mean? Like, within what experiences they had in the military?
Yes, definitely. It varies.
And how does that change your perspective on anything?
Well, it's because I would see it. I would see it. For example, I've seen some guys have some bad leadership, and I see them, whatever their dreams were crushed by these bad leadership. Because like, imagine this guy's probably deployed 3 or 4 times. Maybe he's on his first or second divorce. Maybe he's an alcoholic, and then you're telling him he's in charge of a fresh guy who's eager and hungry. Yeah, and they would project all that shit onto this guy. Yeah. So I've seen people have their what if it was going to be a good positive and experience just go down the drain. I've had a friend who is a female, and I told her like, hey, you need to be careful because this is like a man's world, and there's a lot of bad people there, and don't trust anybody. Yeah. And unfortunately, an incident did happen to her. Yeah. I
can only imagine being a woman in the military. Sounds intimidating.
Yeah, it's like certain jobs are just jobs for dudes, and then like if you're in the medical field, well, it's more normal. Yeah. But if you're doing a job, there's predators like 100%, outside and inside. Yeah. And then I've also seen other people just like me who that was their life-changing event that set them off, and they've done great things. So to be honest, like I have kids, based on what I've seen, and I have daughters, I would not fucking tell them to join the military. Yeah. My son, I would never tell any of my kids what to do when it comes to that stuff. I would encourage certain things, but if they decided to join the military, I would set them up for success. Yeah. But based overall, especially me being a father, now it's changing everything. I would not have them be in the military at all. Yeah.
I feel like you've accomplished so much, and you've already given back so much, and seems like you've lived like 1,000 lives within your life. Yeah. What else, like what other goals do you have, or what, because I feel like you're the type of person where like you're never satisfied, and like not in a bad way, but in like you're always chasing like Like, how can I be better? How can I make this community better? How can I, like, what's next? Like, what?
So it was funny the other day. I was like, okay, I donated a kidney like
Yeah. We haven't even touched on that yet. Yeah.
I donated a kidney 2 years ago. How do I
top that?
How do I top that?
You're like,
and I like jokingly said it.
Your wife's like, no, you don't top that.
Yeah.
Stop it.
To be honest, it's more of this. My mentor Hugh Vanderwall, he actually recently sent me a message, and it wasn't even like we were talking about. Sometimes we send each other memes and stuff like that, but it wasn't like we were talking about anything serious. And he sent me a message, and I just opened it up. Like, I think it was after the gym, and he said, "I want you to win. I want you to keep knocking it out of the like park, because the more you win, the more success you have, the more you show others what's possible." Yeah. And when he said that, I was like, damn, dude, I'm about to fucking cry here, dude. I didn't expect this message.
Cool.
And that's what I wanted to do, because guess what? If somebody grew up with a lot of friends and a great household, you know, with a white picket fence and the dog, and they went to the school dances and nobody ever made fun of them, cool. But that was not my life.
And that's not the case for a lot of kids. Yeah.
So that's who I feel like I speak to more, like 100%. Is those people. And it's like, look, man, you can be a winner. You can achieve things in life. And well, how do I do that? I keep crushing it. Yeah. But how do I do that even more within my community? Because I grew up in Southern California in certain, you know, cities and environments, and I came back after a decade, and then I start seeing these kids who I see them, and that's fucking me.
Yeah, you're like, little. I see myself in them. Yeah.
So I need to do something there. So I want to be a much bigger leader in my community. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm going to run for office. I don't think I need to run for office.
No, I don't think.
I don't think I need to do any of that to be a leader within my community. And that's what it is gaining the trust and of these people who've been lied to for multiple years. I went to a skate park and I gave away last summer over $6,000 worth of skateboards. And when I had another event, we did that in the summer, and then I did it like a Christmas board giveaway. Yeah. One of the kids, you know what he said? And I almost fucking started crying. He goes, "Hey man, you came back." Oh. And I was like,
they're not used to that.
I know why he said that.
Yeah, because you've experienced it yourself. Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, dude. Like, I was like, and I told him, I was like,
and that kid will never forget that either.
And I told him, I was like, bro, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, you know, that and doing more of that. And, you know, I'm super blessed of obviously in the beginning didn't feel so blessed, but now I got my kids are healthy. Yeah. I didn't get a divorce. Like most dudes in the military. Yeah. So, and I have my health. And so now it's like, what else can I do? Because this community, the law enforcement, 2A, fucking military community, veteran community, like there's a lot of dudes that are willing to die for each other, but what we need is more people willing to live for each other.
100%. Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I love this community. I love the martial arts community because it's given me so much. I love it so much that, you know, somebody needed a kidney, and I was like, well, I got fucking 2, so let's do it.
Yeah. I feel like something that makes people so receptive to you is like your vulnerability. Because I feel like men in general usually aren't as vulnerable or open with their weaknesses, you know what I mean, with kind of just bearing it all. And then especially coming from the military community or like gang member community or poverty, like I feel like a lot of people don't speak on that. And I feel like whether your community is military or gym or everything, I think something you come to realize, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, is like everyone has a story, and you never know if when you're vulnerable, who you're going to, you know, hit a nerve to, or like who you're going to connect with, or who you're going to help when you're, you know, being that vulnerable. Yeah. And I feel like that's something that's pretty rare, because I know it's more normalized now, obviously. Yeah. You know, like mental health talk, especially within like the martial arts and MMA and military community, like in general, I feel like it's more talked about. Yeah. But it's still not where it should be. And I think especially like you said, pinpointing your community is like the perfect place to start. I feel like everyone always tries to start like so big and so broad, and it's like, what can you control? Like you can control who's around you. Yeah. You can influence who's around you. Like you impact your actions and your words, and the way you carry yourself impacts everyone directly around you. And then that has a trickle effect, you know? And I feel like you've done a good job of like starting small, and then it's just like spreading.
And
then,
like, I think that's how it should be. Like sometimes I'll hear people complain about what's going on in the country, or what's going on this, what's going on that. And for example, when I was at school, I would hear these veterans bitch complain every single fucking day in the veteran center about this group and that group and this. And then they did that Monday, did that Tuesday, all the way to Friday. And then one day I was just like, bro, are you going to do something about it? Or are you just going to keep bitching and complaining?
Bitch about it? Yeah.
Like, do you not realize that you're bitching and complaining?
That's people's favorite thing to do is just talk about shit.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you going to do about it? Like,
and people are like, what's your opinion on this? I'm like, bro, I don't know. You know what I do know? What I can control. And people want this satisfaction right away, this instant gratification, but you're not going to get it. Anything that's worth changing is going to take time. It's going to time and energy. And I remember thinking, like, for example, when I was in the military, one guy was like, hey man, for like a Mexican, you're not that bad. And in the military, you joke about it. Compliment. You joke about everything, right? Yeah. So like the as you can imagine, when it comes to life and death, it's serious to relax and break the ice or something. Just you make fucked up jokes, right? Yeah. So that was minor compared to some of the stuff I've heard. But I remember thinking after a couple months, he was like, hey man, remember how I would say, like, for a Mexican, you're not that bad? I was like, yeah. He's like, I wasn't joking. And I was like, I figured. Wow. And
at least he's honest.
At the time, his dad had just died. Oh. And he goes, hey man, my dad taught me a lot and I love him. But one of the things that he taught me was that all Mexicans come here to rape this country and take advantage of it. So that's what I thought you were. Yeah. And he goes, dude, you are one of, if not the most hardest working person in this company. Yeah. And I didn't change his opinion with a 30-second video. I didn't change his opinion over over a meme.
Who you are.
It's time and energy. And then again, I found that lesson. I relearned that lesson, or this example happened again when I went to school, and we had this government class, right? And the teacher liked discussion. And afterwards, after the semester was over, I walked out and some kid stops me and he's like, hey man, he's like, Angel, he goes, hey, I just want to tell you that it was an honor and privilege to have you in the class. When you first voiced that you were a veteran, I remember thinking you were going to be a certain way.
Stereotype.
I wanted to cancel you out. I didn't care what you had to say. But when we had discussions, everything you said was based on experience, not emotion. Yeah. And it was good having you in the class. And I was like, oh, bro, I didn't even know you didn't like me. Yeah.
You're like, oh, you didn't like me? I thought we were homies. Okay.
That's my bad. That's what I thought when he told me that. I was like, oh, I had no idea, like, you didn't like me. Yeah. But it took time. And
I mean, that says a lot too, like when people go out of their way to like let you know, like, hey, you impacted me. Because I think something you hear a lot is like, you never know who you're inspiring, or like you never know who you're impacting, by your little actions. But to get someone to actually go up to you face to face, which I feel like a lot of people don't have the courage to do, and be like, hey man, like, I fucked up, or like, like, I'm sorry, like I had a stereotype set on you and you proved me wrong, so I wanted to apologize. Like, that even says a lot right there.
Yeah, and for the vulnerable part, in the beginning, why I was so vulnerable is because I got shitted on, and the way I saw it is like, what are you going to tell me, your dude, that hasn't already been done and to me? And then I wanted to share it because I'm like, I can't possibly be the only veteran feeling this way.
100%.
And so it should do more good. And then even then about the gang life, just like today when I made a post of a certain video, and one of the dudes, he emailed me, he's like, hey man, like, way on you to have the balls to share your past. And I'm like, because look, if obviously, like, I want, as the shooting company, we want business. We 100%. Want to be affiliated with certain companies or groups and to grow and have sponsorships and do all this and that. But guess what? I'm not going to hide that part of my life. Yeah. Just so this person sponsors us or works with us or wants to train with us.
Transparency, yeah.
It's like, look, me sharing who I am and my downfalls, hopefully it helps someone else who's in there who might think like, I'm fucking lost.
Yeah, and it's so easy with social media to do that too. Like, obviously you control what you post. You know what I mean? So you can control the narrative of how people perceive you to a certain degree. You can hide the ugly parts and put all the good parts out there. I feel like that's what people like to do. Yeah. Not a lot of people will like want to post after they've like taken a big L. They might not want the world to know, but the second they win, they're like, hey guys, like, I won. Yeah. And I feel like, especially when you're looking at it as branding or a business or trying to, make money, I feel like it's super easy to like, not sell your soul, but it's easy to like you know, like cut certain parts out and like try to put this act on and try to like hide the parts of yourself that like made you who you were, you know? But I also feel like sometimes people see through that, and it's so much better to just be transparent and talk about your downfalls or like your bad experiences, or even like if you were a shitty person before and you were like, I made really bad choices, and like that's okay because I'm not that person anymore and I've grown to that. And I feel like being transparent like that in the end will not like maybe bring you more business, but it'll bring you the quality of people that you want to be associated with. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it will bring you people that value you for your transparency and maybe relate to you because, or maybe they're still a bad person and they want to be better and you are inspiring them to be better. Like I feel like it's so easy to like lie and cover up the bad parts, but you being yourself is going to bring out people who are like, hey, I like that guy. Like he's real. Like he's not trying to hide anything. And then they might relate to you, or they might know someone who could relate to you. And that's where that community starts to build. And now it's not just like, you know, a brand just for like the face of something. Now it actually holds meaning and it holds like authenticity, you know?
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. And obviously that stuff is now more appreciated and people want that. But when I started that wasn't my goal. Yeah. I didn't think that's what was going to happen. But one of the biggest things, well, it's a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is that I've had help along the way. You know, I've had all these great mentors and, you know, Hugh Vanderwall being the biggest one. And that's another reason why I keep helping is because he helped me. He didn't think I'm doing this because he's going to give me this later on, or he's going to do this.
He wasn't expecting something in return.
He just did it because that's who he is. Yeah. And the more I actually say his name, I'll get messages and people would be like, Hugh Vanderwall is in my unit, or because he's actually still active duty.
Oh, wow.
And they'd be like, or he was in my old unit, and he was the same way to everybody because that's how he treated people.
Yeah. And I feel like it's amazing because especially if you are lacking, you know, that, I don't want to say father figure, but maybe to some it is, but that, like role model figure, or that like figure to guide you or to help you or to be there for you and guide. Like I feel like a lot of people are missing that, and it's like to be that person in not only one person's life but to fill that role in so many. I mean, he impacted you and now you're using the way he impacted you to impact other people, and it's like you never know how one interaction with someone can change them, like for the better and the worse. But I don't know, I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to you and OG Pumpkin and stuff like that, because you are very transparent and you're like, it is what it is. It was what it was, but what are we doing now? Yeah. Like, what can we do now? What can we do for the future? And how are we building off of that?
Oh, definitely. You know, and that's why like OG Pumpkin is like not a brand. It's like literally like a movement. Like I have over 700 people with an OG Pumpkin tattooed on them.
I know. I see all of them. I'm like, that's so crazy.
And it's all over the world. Like it's special operation units in other countries. It's and then it kind of just branched out. It's like medical professionals. Yeah. Like someone, instead of the rifle being right next to the figure. Yeah. It's someone will have like a doctor's like.
Oh, like they like kind of customize it for themselves.
Or it'll be like a trash can because the dude's like, oh, I'm a garbage man. Yeah. He's like a proud garbage man. Or it'll be like a plumber, and I'll be like, bro, this is like next level. Yeah. And people will send me pictures and they'll be like, dude, I saw this guy at the bar and we just.
Like, hey, there's this random guy in Huntington Beach. Do you know this guy? And you're like, nope.
And they'll start talking. Yeah. And they'll become friends. And be like, oh, I saw this dude at the gym and he had it. And we started talking for like an hour. And I'm like, bro, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah. I think it's amazing to hear like where you started from and what you've turned it into. I feel like just like with any bad thing in life, it's so easy to go down one path or another, you know. And even I feel like you started to go down one path and you were like redirect. You're like, okay, I could do better than this. Like I am capable of so much more. And then now you're inspiring others. So I just want to say thank you for coming on. Is there anything I missed that you want to touch, or any message you want to get out? You want to talk about anything? I know I kind of put you on the spot.
No, it was fun.
Any last words?
This was fun, and I'm glad you're doing it. And you know, it means a lot to be here, because I liked you like from the beginning, because I think if you remember how I first met you. Yeah. Well, we actually didn't even meet. I saw you
training at Classic.
No, you walked up to Tyler. Oh. And you're like, hey, I want to come back to the gym.
That was when I first,
when you first came back, right? And at the time, I didn't know who you were. Yeah. I just saw someone who, I was like, oh shit, like you don't see this in the veteran martial arts or law enforcement or any of that community. Like this person just walked up, and I don't even think you knew I was right next to him. And I like just opened up to Tyler and it was like, hey, I want to come back to the gym. I know I've been gone.
Yeah.
I really do want to be part of this team.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. I was like,
yeah, because I had went to Classic for like twice, like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then I just never went back because I had like personal stuff going on. And I kind of like left Tyler hanging for a while. But it wasn't personal and it wasn't because of the gym. I had some personal stuff and it wasn't even my fault. But I remember when I went back, I was like, I got to like be a man about this. You know what I mean? Like, and I've always been like that. Like, I'm a very upfront, I don't want to beat around the bush type of person. So it's like, hey, we didn't end on the best note. Whether it was my fault or not, it really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I want to come back and I'm eager to learn and I'm eager to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so when I saw that, I was like, man, I was like, oh, she's probably cool. And then I found out who you were, and I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh shit, she's a fucking UFC, she's a fucking badass. And then you know how young you were, and I was like, oh shit, like that's. And I admire that. I admire people who work hard.
Thank you.
Athleticism, commitment to excellence. I admire that. You know, even like I fucking hate the Patriots or Tom Brady because they would fucking beat my team all the time. But you know what? I do appreciate of Tom Brady that fucking excellence.
Yeah.
Right. That commitment to excellence, and you can't. How can you hate
the perfection?
That?
Yeah.
So when people reach
it's like John Jones,
the high of
it's
whatever.
like no matter how many fuck ups John Jones has, you're like, fuck, he's so good.
He's
so good. I have to respect that. Yeah. He's amazing. Yeah.
And so I did like that, and I was like, oh, this chick's badass. And then, you know, the whole podcast thing again, man, like this is crazy. I literally thought I was gonna be like number 10 or 15 to be number 1. I was like, fuck. Well, hopefully they enjoyed it. Last word, just fucking, you know, believe in yourself. Like believe in yourself to the point where it's almost fucking delusional, where people are telling you can't do this, you can't do that, and just look at them and nod and say yes and okay, and then but still go fucking do what you want to go do.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when you want to achieve greatness. That's something you're gonna have to, whether it's like random people on the internet commenting stuff, or it's someone who's literally like your boss or your coach or someone that you respect or that's in that power role. Like sometimes you just have to be like, you can think whatever you want to think. I believe in myself, and whatever you say is not going to affect me. Definitely. So I 100% believe that. You have to be somewhat delusional if you want to be great. Look at Conor McGregor. Motherfucker's delusional as hell, but he's one of the greats.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like some people who are just delusional, like they're in their own reality and they've created their own reality, and it's come to fruition after manifesting it.
Definitely. So thank you again for having me.
No, of course. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I also hope that I did justice with sharing Angel's story. It was my first podcast with a guest, so I'm trying to make sure I'm asking the right questions and leading the conversation in the right way. And I really felt like Angel's story and who he is was the best first person to have on the podcast. So I'm hoping to have guests on pretty frequent. So I'm working on a lineup, but hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.